In this video, we're going to start working our way through Chapter 8. And Chapter 8 is going to teach us all about hypothesis testing. So in hypothesis testing, we're going to have a claim that we've gathered some data about, and then we'll test whether we want to reject that claim or not. So kind of the basis of this, the rare event rule for inferential statistics. If under a given assumption the probability of a particular event is extremely small, we conclude that the assumption is probably incorrect. So if we make an assumption about something and then we test it and the probability of that thing happening is really, really small, our assumption was probably incorrect. Now the first part of our hypothesis testing will actually be setting up a null and an alternate hypothesis. And the notation for these is H0 and H1. So the null hypothesis, which we call H0, is a statement that the value of a particular parameter is equal to some claimed value. So the thing to remember is that H0 will always have an equal sign. It'll be a statement of equality. The alternate hypothesis, which we call H1, is the statement that a parameter has a value that differs from the null hypothesis. So something's not equal. Now, the alternate hypothesis will use either a greater than, a less than, or a does not equal symbol. And we'll talk about how to set these up. Okay, sorry for that pause. I was having trouble scrolling. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to set up the null and the alternate hypothesis. So our first claim says less than 50% of the adults say that cloning humans should be allowed. Now, this is talking about a proportion. So we're going to use the letter P. And we have the statement less than 50%. So whenever we have a less than or a greater than, that's actually going to be our alternate hypothesis. So we want our alternate hypothesis, P is less than, and we'll change this to a decimal, 0.5. Now you might want to denote whenever you're doing these, which one's your claim. So that's our claim. That's what the statement had in it. Now our null hypothesis is always a statement of equality, is always an equal. So it'll be the same thing, just with an equal sign. P is equal to 0.5. So when we do our test, our hypothesis test, we'll actually be testing the null hypothesis, and that will allow us to then make an argument about the alternate hypothesis. So the next one, claim. The mean head circumference of all 2-month-old human babies is 40 centimeters. Now this is talking about a mean. So for means, we use the symbol mu. So our claim is that it is 40 centimeters. Now is the same as equal to. So in this case, our null hypothesis is our claim. We're also going to write that. And when we don't have a less than or greater than, then our alternate hypothesis is going to be mu does not equal 40. Okay, so we'll look at a few more. The next one, the claim says that 30% of all federal arrests are drug related. So here it's just 30% are. Again, this is a proportion, so we'll use a P. And this is an equal to statement. So we'll say P is equal to 0.3, and that's our claim. And then for our alternate will have P does not equal 0.3. Okay. Our next claim says the mean internal body temperature of healthy adults is less than 98.6. Now we're talking about a mean, so we're going to use mu. And the claim is that it's less than 98.6. So our alternate hypothesis is going to be mu is less than 98.6. That's our claim. And our null hypothesis, mu is equal to 98.6. That one will always be equal and the same number. So number 5, so it says, among smokers who try to quit by using a nicotine patch, over half of them are smoking again 1 year after treatment. Now this one's a little tricky, and that's why we're going to go over it. And so it says over half. So we want to think about what percentage that means. Well, half would be 50%. So when we say over half, we mean more than 50%. So again, this is a proportion. So we're going to say, for our alternate, we'll say P is greater than 0.5. And that makes our null P is equal to 0.5. Sorry, that's not writing. Okay, you can see it decided to update there all at one time. So P is equal to 0.5. Okay, and the last one we're going to use as an example. Claim number 6 here. So it says, the mean weight of all adult black bears is more than 200 pounds. So we have mean, so that's going to be mu, and more than 200 pounds. So our alternate hypothesis is going to be mu is greater than 200. And our null hypothesis will be mu equals 200. Okay, so we're going to talk about how we'll actually test hypothesis tests. So for testing purposes, we always assume that the null hypothesis H0 is true. That's what we'll actually be testing. After each test, H0 is either rejected or not rejected. So one thing just to be, the words are very important here. So if the original claim is H0, you can never support it or not support it. You only say reject or not reject. So it's important to look at the problem and know what the actual claim is. Is it H0 or H1? If it's H0, then you'll decide if you reject it or not reject it, and you'll be done. If the original claim is the alternate hypothesis, we don't reject the alternate hypothesis. We either support it or do not support. And the wording sometimes is what trips up students. When we don't support it, sometimes you'll say there's insufficient evidence to support the claim. Okay, so that would be saying we don't support the claim. So you want to get the concepts as well as just these exact words.